right, so moving on, there is one more tab that I want to introduce you to. You can see up here there are a collection. There's 6 total. The only one that I want to cover right now really is the geometry spreadsheet, because this is one that we're going to be using a lot. If we go ahead and click on this, we can see what really appears to be a whole lot of gobbledygook. I'm going to move this over here. A lot of data on this sheet. This sheet really is the hub of Houdini's brain. It is letting you know all the data that exists in your scene. We can maybe contextualize this a little bit more and help make sense of it. In the sphere node itself, I am generating a color randomly based on the primitive, meaning every single primitive in this scene has been assigned a random color. Now, in the viewport, we are seeing that color, and that's all well and good. But what is the color comprised of? Well, a color attribute is comprised of 3 values. You can think of it as a red, blue, and green value. You may be familiar with this in other DCCs, other softwares, where you can create any combination of colors by assigning it a red value between 0 and 1, a green value between 0 and 1, and a blue value between 0 and 1. Now, in this way, it has assigned random values to the red, blue, and green channel for the primitive. If you can think of any color as a combination of 3 values between 0 and 1 in a red, blue, and green channel, then it makes sense that the color that we're seeing is just a combination of those numbers. Those numbers are stored in the geometry spreadsheet. So I will toggle this button. To display the primitive numbers, right? And we'll go to the top here, and we can find number 0 right here. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So with 0 active, we can see it's kind of like a purpley, pinky color. You can see I did a lot of color study, right? Based on my deep knowledge of color names. But if we go over to the geometry spreadsheet and we go to the 0, well, one thing I will show you right out the gate, though, is the geometry spreadsheet is separated into the points attributes, the vertices attributes, the primitives attributes, and the detail attribute. Now, the points, that's every point in our scene. Vertices, every vertex in our scene. Primitives, every primitive in our scene. But detail, that's the overall geometry. So we can assign attributes to the whole geometry as well. But just know that that's the breakdown. So considering that in our scene, I have color on the primitive class that is randomly being assigned, if we go to the geometry spreadsheet, right out the gate, you'll see there's no value at all. What is this? This is position of the points in 3D space. Our position X, position Y, position Z, right? So that's where it is in 3D space. That makes sense. But if we go over to the primitives tab, now we can see CDR, CDG, and CDB, right? This is the color for the red, blue, and green channel. And we can see this is the color combination for the red, blue, and green that makes up this color right here. And more so, we have every single primitive's color combination. But attributes are not in any way limited to color. In fact, they're not limited to anything at all. You can create an attribute value from anything for anything. The point of these attributes, for example, is for, let's take the points. Each point in the scene to hold on to an important bit of information that can be used later in order to do another thing with that information. For example, if you have a particle simulation, you will have them hold on to their individual age, how long they have existed for in frames or seconds, and then you can delete particles that exist beyond 5 seconds because each particle knows how long it existed for. Points are very responsible adults. We give them a value, and then when we call out that value, we say everyone with a value above X step forward, those points step forward, the rest step back, right? It gives us control over a lot of different things. And we can create them in a lot of different ways. For example, I will use an attribute create node right here. I'll turn off the bypass. I'll go down. I already created this, but you can see in the name, I created an attribute called new with a value of 0. Now, it is going to create this on every single point, right? Class point in our scene. And we can see that in the geometry spreadsheet. If it's bypassed, it doesn't exist, but the minute that we activate it, it has created an attribute that is called new with a value of 0 on every single point in our scene. And if I change that value to 1, it's updated across every single point. This by itself is not very useful, but like the examples I was talking about earlier, let's look at a useful use case. Let's say, for example, we have this geometry, and for whatever reason, we want to delete randomly half of the polygons on the geometry. This may happen if you have too dense of a point cloud with a particle simulation, and you just want to randomly cull half of the particles. How can we do this? Well, we'll go into this node later, but there's a very simple bit of code here where I'm basically creating a random attribute, a random float attribute, and on that attribute, I am randomly assigning a value between 0 and 1 to each primitive on my geometry. Don't let this intimidate you. We will go into detail, and this very soon will make a whole lot of sense. The point of this is that on the geometry now, on the primitives in particular, because that's where I ran it over, I have created a random value between 0 and 1. We can see that throughout the entirety of my geometry. Then what I'm doing is with a blast node, it's a simplified version of Houdini's delete node, you'll use it a lot, I am entering another little bit of code into the group that I want this to run over. I'm saying, hey, if your attribute random that was assigned to you is greater than 0.5, I want you to get deleted. Step forward, primitives, if your value is greater than 0.5. And they do, and then we delete them. So in this way, I have assigned a random value, and then I have used it to delete geometry. Over the duration of this course, you will truly start to unlock the power of these attributes, right, in the geometry spreadsheet. And in this way, the geometry spreadsheet is very, very important to have on screen at all time. Now, right now, in its current configuration, we have to either see our scene view or see the data. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could see both at the same time? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do in the next video. Again, particularly for this topic, please do not worry if this doesn't make full sense. It will, because if I can understand it, I guarantee you, with enough exposure to it, you can too.
If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more, head to doublejumpacademy.com/Jordan for the full course. Link's in the description. You're just a click away. Click it.